get is y'all don't know anything about racing. This is true. You're right. You're in the wrong show.
Yeah.
You're watching the wrong show if you want to hear like super engineer stuff.
Okay. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Hitting the Apex. I'm Vish. My man Evan here. How's it going, man?
What's going on, guys? How's everything today?
Good. We got an exciting one to talk about. Shout out to Dan Barry in the chat. So something happened on the way to Max Verstappen's victory this time. But I guess we should start before we get into the race. We should start about the. I guess let's start with Williams and what happened in practice. So Albon crashes his car, wrecks it beyond repair. They're in Australia, so they don't have a lot of spare parts. They don't have a spare car. So they just gave him Logan Sargent's car and said, "Logan, you're out. You're out."
Yeah, it's incredible, man. Like just to tell another driver, professional guy, a guy that is got to Formula One the way that Logan Sargent did, just hey, I'm sorry, but we couldn't make an extra car, which is something that every other team has done, so we're sorry. We're just going to take your car and give it to Alex Albon.
So I didn't see anything on that. Did every other team have spare cars in Australia? Because often when they do these like one-off races, they don't take a lot of parts and spare stuff because they're just. Do you know if another team would they have had another car there?
Well, most of the other teams have spare cars. I'm not sure whether they take them to Australia or not, but at least they have the spare cars.
So at least my understanding was that was one of the big issues. They just didn't have the spare chassis there.
No.
With that said,
they don't have it. Period. They don't have a spare one.
Period. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, to your point, to take Logan Sargent's car and just be like, you know what, you're out this weekend. Pretty rough, especially. I mean, we all know what happened. Now Albon didn't score points anyway. So even though there were 3 DNFs, he still didn't score points. So it looks like it didn't really make much of a difference. Obviously, it was his fault. So It seems a little messed up there. He was professional about it, but I mean, internally he's got to be pretty upset.
No, for sure. I mean,
shout out to Logan
Sargent, overall, again, like I was saying, you got to feel bad for Logan in this situation. Everybody likes to rag on him because he is, I guess he's besides Piastri, he's the only other, newest or newer driver that's, in Formula One right now. And obviously Oscar's having a great year so far, but he's kind of just like not showing up. He's almost the comparison to the Nikita Mazepin of this year, except without, the Russian oligarch type of stuff going on with that. But either way, he's kind of that pariah. He's kind of that guy that it's, he's just there. He's not anybody that we're thinking long-term or anything like that, which sucks because he is the only American driver. He is somebody who we all, especially down here in South Florida, would love to see do great because, he's from down here. He's from, this area, but overall, you see where Williams made the decision to do this because Alex is 99.9% of the time the faster driver. But at this point, it's like it still sucks to see something like that happen. You can't say that it doesn't. You can't feel bad for, or you can't not feel bad for him.
Yeah, and like I get Albon is quicker, like you said, consistently, and is the better driver flatly, but we're in the third race here. Like, it's not like they're fighting for a championship. I get that there's they're expecting the field to bunch up at 6th place, but it's a little early in the season for essentially team wars. Like, if it was, towards the end of the season and, obviously not fight for a championship, but let's say Albon, needs points to move up a spot in the driver's standing or something, that's more defensible. In the third race, I don't know. And, of course, it didn't pay off at all. They didn't score points.
No.
Despite and we'll get into Alonso's penalty later, him getting a stop go, which ended up being added as 20 seconds. 3 cars DNFing, still finished 11. So,
Yeah.
they would have had all of that telemetry and all before. So, they kind of probably knew it wasn't realistic to score points unless something really horrible went wrong. Like, I don't know that Sargent would have done substantively worse than what Albon did. So it sucks for him. And again, it's Albon's fault for wrecking the car. So it feels like, Sargent got penalized for Albon's mistake there.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's really, that's the biggest, bad thing about it is just the fact that it was Alex's fault. He should have been the one that took the hit off of it. I mean, do you think like maybe Alex should have stepped up and said, hey, nah, I understand as a team you guys want me to do this, but I don't want to take this car from this kid. Like, let him get the experience, let him get the drive. Or is it just as a driver, you're like, I want to be in a car no matter what?
Yeah, no, I think it's the latter. I'm curious if any of the drivers in the grid would have said, no, it was my fault. I don't think so. I won't necessarily fault Albon for that. I think it's pretty – these guys are racers. They want to race. And the team made the decision. If you later find out that, like – I don't think so. I don't think he would – if he was – I mean, if they – I don't think Mercedes would do this. They're notoriously not giving team orders. But if they came and said they're going to give him George Russell's car, I don't think he would take it. Not for this. If it's something like – mechanical issue they can't fix, and again, where they're positioned in the championship, it makes a difference. That's a different story entirely. But just if you're the one that caused the problem in the first place, it's a little bit, I mean, again, he wants to score points. He's like that at that end of the field. I mean, we've gotten used to Albon, being a mainstay in Formula One now for a while, obviously with AlphaTauri at the time, and then Red Bull, and then back. And these guys are like a few, one bad season away from their career being over when you're at that end of the field. So, he's not going to necessarily pass up an opportunity to score points either.
Yeah, this is true.
All right, well, let's get more into the to what happened on technically Sunday early morning in our
market
neck of the woods here. Yeah, so. Yeah, it finally happened, man. So let's unpack this a little bit. So obviously Carlos Sainz wins. Max Verstappen's engine was it actually wasn't the engine, it was like the brakes, because so the explanation we've got, something got stuck on his brake and eventually caught on fire and basically burned the right backside of his car. Now I will say, before that happened, and we don't know how afflicted he was with the brake issues at that point, Carlos smoked him and passed him before the car blew up. So a very interesting race. The Ferrari was very racy this weekend, and Carlos capitalized on it. What were your, I guess, thoughts on all of that transpired? Because it happened within, Max held the lead off the start line, looked good, and then all of a sudden, Carlos is sticking with him. That usually doesn't happen, that he passed him, and then, a couple of laps later, the engine went, or not the engine, the rear of the car caught on fire. So what were your kind of thoughts around that whole thing?
Well, I mean, the start of the race was, we all thought it was going to happen, that Max was just going to take off and he was going to blow past everybody. From the reports that I've been reading is that Max felt that brake was sticky even from the formation lap. That there was something not right about the brakes. So there was an issue with that. And yet he was still able to fend off Carlos for, 3 laps or whatever it was before Carlos actually got past him, and then that's when he had to retire the car because he realized that it was just not going to get any better. But overall, those Ferraris were racy all weekend. We saw that, through qualifying. Carlos Sainz was on the front row, started P2. That track tends to lend itself pretty well to the Ferraris and how they perform, and their strengths and weaknesses, are mitigated a little bit. It was such a good overall, just because of the fact that it was something different. And not only was it something different without the aspect of having Max, just blow away everybody, but it was still good racing throughout the entire race. I mean, it says that, the win was only by 2.366 seconds, but overall, Carlos had it in hand, but from 2 all the way down, it was good racing throughout. You had, team orders between Lando and Oscar. You had Lando on a little bit of a different strategy than Charles, but catching him at the end. I was sitting there watching the race at the very end and being like, he's 3.6 seconds away. He's 3.4 seconds away. He's 3.2 seconds away. Lando had the fastest lap, going for the majority of that last stint until Charles just said F it and just took off and got the fastest lap of the race and just, pulled away from Lando with, I think, 3 or 4 laps left or whatever it was. But it was a race throughout. It was a really, really good race throughout, all the way up and down the field. So that's what we like to see. We don't want to see these races where somebody blows everybody out of the water. We don't want to see Max win every single race. As much as it's an impressive feat and it's something that is incredibly, incredibly, historic in what's going on, in this run that he's having right now. It just makes everything so much funner when something like this happens. It's one of those, we're in tournament season now. It's one of those Cinderella stories, I guess you could say, something like that. I mean, maybe not to the point of like an RB winning or a Haas winning or something like that, but still, it's something different and it's something fun to watch. And Carlos, like I said last week, I think he's out for blood, and I really think he's, this isn't going to be the last time, he wins during this season, because I just think that car is going to be fast. I think that it's already, shown that it can keep up with those, Red Bulls. And I mean, it's not like the Red Bulls did great. Sergio Perez really, he ended up in 5th, but he really didn't,
he was
show
that
much. I mean,
minute off. And I think that speaks more to Perez than anything else. I mean, he's just not. He shouldn't be in that car anymore.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but at the end of the day, that car is still a really good car. We all know how good that Red Bull is, and we've seen him go up and down the field in that same car, and he just couldn't keep up with the McLarens or the Ferraris, on Sunday. And that makes for good stuff.
It's hard, we don't know what would have happened if Max's car, and it would have probably been a battle with Carlos to the end. Yeah, and as John said, this was the first time they raced in heat though too. Everything else is at night, and so not only did Max have a mechanical issue, but Lewis Hamilton's engine let go as well. So these cars, they're very much more reliable than they used to be, but this was the first time they had to drive them at race pace over an extended period of time in not night conditions. So it's a little bit different stress on the car. Some people had issues. You did mention the McLaren team orders. What do you think overall of their strategy? Because they did, they gave Piastri, the reason they had to issue the team orders, they gave Piastri preference at the first pit stop to try and cover off. I believe it was George Russell who went with an early pit stop. And that's what screwed Norris up, and he went long, and it was not the preferred strategy. So they kind of tried to recover that by giving team orders, but you wonder if they'd kept Lando and pitted him in sequence with everyone else, maybe he could have finished second.
Well, looking at it the way that when I was watching the race, it seemed like they were trying to have Lando stay out there as long as Carlos did. Remember, Carlos didn't pit until later on either. I mean, he had already built a pretty strong lead by then, but he was, I believe, within 10 to 12 seconds of Carlos before they decided to finally bring him in, obviously after Oscar had been brought in. But it seemed that for a while there, it was Carlos and Lando were like the last two that were staying on that first set of tires, and it just seemed like maybe they thought that they could go on a similar strategy to whatever Carlos was doing and try to up with him. But then when Charles undercut him, that undercut was so strong in Melbourne this week that really that is what changed everything and changed the whole dynamic. Plus, on top of that, Oscar, the pit stop that they did for Oscar was like 3.5 seconds or something like that. It really wasn't a great pit stop. For Lando, it was a little quicker, but still, you got your timing off a little bit like that in the pits. With everything that's been happening, or with everything else that happens in the race, it will mess up the timing of everything, like we were saying. But I think it was the right move. Obviously, in that final stint, Lando did have the fastest lap of the race for a long time until Charles blew it away. But he was obviously the faster driver out of the two. You could just tell that. As much as it would have been nice to have seen Oscar, podium at his home race, it was the smart thing to do to put Lando out front and have him try to chase Charles down, because I know Oscar's fast, but I don't know if he's gotten to that point to where the team trusts him to try to chase him down.
And I think the question is more: should they have pitted? Should they have used if they'd used Oscar's strategy for Lando? How much further up the field would he be? And you're right. Sainz
it would have been a lot closer for sure.
Yeah. Sainz did go long, but it's totally different when you're controlling the race from the front and not getting the dirty air off the car in front of you, messing up wearing your tires faster and all the stuff that the other guys are dealing with. I mean, that's usually the max move, but this time it was Carlos. I'm going to check out front, stay in clean air. My tires will last longer because I'm not having to shred them staying behind someone, and take advantage of that to extend out, build enough of a lead where I can pit and safely come out first still and just control the race the entire way from there.
Yeah, and maybe he would have been up there past Charles and in second place, but overall, that, like I said, that undercut is so strong. They actually did pit Charles pretty early, if I'm not mistaken.
They did, and that was all in sequence. Yeah, they all kind of up to, and that's how Lando was in second for a good bit there, as they all kind of pitted behind him. So You'll notice that there's no Mercedes on the board here. So we mentioned Hamilton DNF in lap 15. George Russell DNF in the next to last lap here. A little controversy there, as so he lost it coming around the corner and put it into the gravel trap, collided with the wall. Car came apart. Well, there's multiple things. Their car came apart, laying in the middle of the track. So first thing is, he's calling for a red flag, which he's vulnerable. He's sitting there in the middle of the track. Yeah. It's a blind corner. Cars are coming around, and they made a VSC instead. Now, what were your thoughts on that? Because I know they got in some criticism, like, how do you not stop the race entirely when there's a driver basically lying in the middle of the track?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's another one of these things that we're all kind of questioning the FIA about. We've had multiple incidences like this where we're saying, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they calling that red flag? It's a clear situation of a driver safety and multiple driver safety. Lance Stroll passed him at almost full speed. Had to swerve out of the way to miss him. Right after or soon after it happened, and that you got spotters, you have the race engineers in these guys' ear. I'm sure somebody said something to Lance, hey, there's a wreck in front of you, and he still it was difficult for him to avoid it. I mean, granted, it's Lance Stroll, it's difficult for him to get through a full race, but overall, at the end of the day, I feel like there should have been a red flag there, but that's just my opinion, and I'm just a guy talking on YouTube.
Yeah, I think the one I agree. I think I don't know how you can look. I get it. They wanted the race to finish. Then if they red flag it, the race is over because you can't restart like less than a lap, like basically. But so I get they wanted the race to finish, but you can't claim that things are about safety and then. The Sainz family showing up. And I mean, he's literally lying in the middle of the track. Like, if someone was standing in the track, you would stop the race immediately. So I don't think this is any different. Like, that car wasn't offering him any protection. The one defense, though, I will say is they do, I don't think people realize how, I mean, obviously you do, but I don't know if the layperson realizes how computerized everything is. Their whole dashboard will light up. They'll know there's an incident in the area. They're required to slow down. There'll be comms through the radio. Their displays are readable now. They'll push messages out. Hey, there's a car in the middle of the track. So they'll have all the drivers will have all that information, which they did. But in a situation like that, in my opinion, you gotta do the safest thing possible, and the safest thing possible is to stop the race. There's 2 laps left for some people, 1 lap left. I think Carlos was going around for his final lap by then. No reason to
Yeah.
to not just stop the race and say this is over. Let's be safe here. Fortunately, nothing happened there, and
Yeah.
but it's one of those things where yes, these are the best drivers in the world, and yes, they have all that information on the screen. Yes, they're slowing down because there's a yellow flag in the area, and the VSCs they really slow down and they basically stop racing.
Mhm.
But you do that 100 times and it goes wrong once, like that's a dead driver, and
For sure.
that's how they learn with things like the VSC and stuff when Jules Bianchi hit the crane, right? Like normally, like that's off the track, no one's really gonna hit it, and most of the time they were right until they were wrong. And you can't be wrong in the sport, and it wasn't worth the risk to me.
No, for sure. And, it's all about risk mitigation when it comes to, or it should be all about risk mitigation when it comes to these giant sports like Formula One. We just saw all these changes that they're doing to the NFL and the rules changes with that to mitigate risks during the kickoffs and stuff like that. You'd think that in a sport where you have billions of dollars and cars that go over 200 miles per hour, that they would make sure that they make the right decisions whenever it comes to that. But again, it comes down to a team's decision or a group of however many stewards there are decision, or the race director's decision to make that call. And at the end of the day, it's all we're looking at this in hindsight. We're saying it should have been this. Maybe at that time they felt like, okay, he's in the middle of the road, but he's coherent. We can slow everybody down. We can get him out of the way, and the race is going to end anyway. So
exactly.
What's the harm of it just being a VSC?
Yeah,
but,
the VS,
like
you said, the VSC freezes everything anyway. It's done.
Yeah,
you might as well just stop it. Now, with that said, our guy Fernando Alonso was penalized for causing that. I can't recall another incident like this that resulted in a penalty. There's definitely been, dangerous driving, weaving, brake checking. Yeah. This was not really that. They're saying he was going abnormally slow. It feels like they're very tightly applying a new standard there a little bit.
Well, I mean, they did look at all the data and looking at watching some or reading up on some stuff that on the incident, on the stuff like that. He did brake way earlier than what he was normally throughout the entire race. They have all of this data. That's the one thing, or that's one of the things about Formula One that makes it so incredible, is they literally have sensors and data and spreadsheets and graphs on how these cars do at any given point at any given time during the entire race, and they can go back and look at it. You can look at a chart that'll say Alonso pitted or Alonso broke at this point, at this turn, on this lap, and compare it to everything else. And even Alonso admitted it himself after the race. Hey, yeah, I slowed down early so that I could, get a better exit off of the next corner and set myself up for, a better launch. And the problem is you have, George Russell, who's been following him, for the previous laps, trying to get around him. He's used to him braking at a certain point. He doesn't brake at that certain point. He brakes earlier, and that's what caught him out. That's what got him,
But my issue with issuing a penalty here is, and a stop go is harsh too. It wasn't like a 5 or 10. Now it only moved him down a couple of spots, and Stroll is actually behind him and moved up, so Aston Martin didn't really lose a lot of points. But there's no rule saying you have to brake at the same point every lap.
No.
George Russell was not like right on his gearbox to the point that like he last minute like brake checked him. He just he went, and it was actually, in fact, if he had done that, it might have actually been in a way easier for Russell to avoid it, because there was nothing visibly different. They're basically saying it caused the dirty error that caused the spin. I'm not buying that. That's on the trailing driver to be in control of their car. It was not a situation where you're right. They had the telemetry. They showed he braked earlier, which is what he said he was doing. Like you say, he did it on purpose because he knew Russell was going to use DRS down the straight to pass him. So he wanted to get a better launch off of that straight. So he slowed down intentionally to set himself up for a better angle, so he'd be quicker at the part where he's most likely to get overtaken. slower over the course of the lap, but faster at the part that was more important, essentially.
Yeah.
There is nothing illegal or
There's
dangerous
nothing wrong
about
with
doing that. And
Yeah.
so I don't understand it's playing the result. Like George Russell did not expect the dirty air there, lost control of the car and had a massive crash. And that results in a penalty. I've never seen, other than like obvious brake checking, which usually, doesn't end well for the lead driver either, because they tend to get run into when they brake check like that. But other than that or weaving, I've not really seen, this kind of a penalty. It's a dangerous precedent to establish, because drivers need to be able to alter their driving style. To me, that's good. That's good defending. In fact, last year, the only non-Red Bull race win, Sainz slowing down on purpose to keep Norris and to give Norris DRS so that he would be able to be faster in the straights. Like, in theory, Norris crashes. It's a penalty for Sainz for going slower than expected. To me, they shouldn't have touched this, in my opinion. Just because now anything can be, well, you were going slower than expected, so you caused the car behind you to lose it. I don't know. To me,
I think you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it. They're playing the result. In a lot of those other situations that we talk about, there wasn't an accident. There wasn't somebody who, caused a BRS at the very end of the race. There wasn't a George Russell to, flip his car over pretty much. A lot of those incidents that we can cite. The driver may have been driving differently, may have been driving more erratically, swerving, brake checking, whatever, but not always does it end up in a wreck. So, that's kind of, that was the best, way to describe it right there, is they're playing the result. They really are.
Yep. But so, as we said, Russell obviously out with the crash. Alonso went stop and go, since you can't serve it. They had 20 seconds to his time, and that is what actually resulted in this final top 10 for the points here. So obviously we know Sainz won, but down here it shuffled it. Stroll and Tsunoda moved up. Alonso dropped down to 8. That was the result of the penalty. And Haas got both cars in the points. Big weekend for them. And like we said, Albon just missed out on points there, and the Alpine continues to be probably the worst car on the grid, except for maybe the exception of cannot do a pit stop here. They kick Sauber team. So we haven't really talked about this on the show, but they've had an ongoing saga with their wheel nuts, and that they cannot secure them properly during pit stops. So they said they changed, some of the grooves on there and some of the design to make them more secure. They still had one long pit stop again, just like they had in the last few races. And then the one that they actually successfully completed, which is, I believe, a Bottas pit stop, they lost a wheel nut. It flew off the gun as they were removing it out into the travel to the fast lane, the pit. So they got fined for that now. It's just, what is your take on this? Like, I don't know how you design a defective bolt mechanism on a pretty standard piece of equipment there, but they're struggling.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that it's interesting that you would think that these are the simple parts of it, and the simple parts of Formula One should be the pit stops. I mean, granted, there's 25 guys, 20 guys, whatever it is, that all have to do the job like that, but they're doing that day in, day out. These guys are drilling themselves, at least on the teams like McLaren and Red Bull and Ferrari and Mercedes. These guys are literally there. They're a lot of these guys are former athletes. A lot of these guys are they're people who know how to train and who know how to prepare themselves. And I mean, this would be something that it's inconceivable to think that these guys aren't prepared to the point to where they're making sure that these pit stops are happening. They should be taking off 1,000 of those wheel nuts a week just to make sure that they do it right twice during the race. It's incredible how you have these mistakes happen, and the designing the wheel nut. I mean, these things should be. I didn't know that these weren't the standard parts. Like the halo, I know is a standard part. The is it the DRS mechanism or something?
No,
is it
that's
standard
actually
for?
variable, and that's one of the reasons Red
Okay.
Bulls is better. I think the actual lever might be the same, but the way you can implement it's a little different. But to your
You
point,
would
this
think
is
that
actually
would be a standard thing.
well, this is actually a part that used to not be, because they used to do a lot of design around the wheel. But now, if you recall, one of the new regulations is it's closed wheel. There used to be the wheels used to be open, and so there's a lot of engineering that would go into to get the exact right airflow through the thing, cool the brakes, get the aerodynamics on it. It was one of the things they that actually then causes the outwash for the cars trying to overtake. So one of the rule changes to allow for more overtaking was to make them close off the wheel. Wheels, which now you see that kind of closed mechanism. Look back to the last generation of cars, you'll see they were open and airflow would flow through there. So yeah, they're much more standardized than they used to be. But to your point, I mean, how many times have you practiced pit stops? You can't get the bolt on and off, and
Exactly.
And at this point, like, they can't really do a pit stop without being sure they're not going to end up in the pit for 45 seconds and like ruin their race. It's crazy.
Yeah,
they need like a red flag every time they need to pit, so they have time to change it. And then the one time they finally got like I said, they got both thoughts. They finally got him in now correctly, and you're like, all right, they finally did it. And then no, it was actually got fined because they lost a wheel nut into the. So yeah, they're quite a big mess. They got a couple of weeks now to hopefully get things in order. So we've talked a lot about the race, but we haven't done the kind of the I don't have the predictions. Jazz had them, but I will say my Logan Sargent will finish ahead of Alex Albon on pace. It's got to go in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's got to go in the Hall of Fame. I think that's
a
great
terrible
one.
fix. It turns a terrible fix. I mean, they literally took his car away, gave it to Albon. Whew.
And on top of that, you predicted George Russell to be on the podium.
I mean, I gotta keep doing that. This is the result. But
exactly.
That said, who was your driver of the day?
I mean, I'm gonna go with Carlos. I think he just completely dominated the race. He took the bull by the horns as you would see, and just had that opportunity and just ran with it. And on top of that, the whole weekend he was strong. It wasn't just about the race. He was putting himself in that position. He was strong, through practice. He was strong through qualifying P2. He legitimately looked like he could have given a fight to Max, even if Max was at his best. So I'm going to go with Carlos. And I said in my predictions, I predicted a double podium by Ferrari. Granted, it was 2 and 3 with Max winning, but I still kind of got that right. Yeah, I still kind of got that right. I don't remember what my crazy one was. What was that? I'm trying to remember what that one was.
I mean, I can't believe I didn't go George Russell DNF. I missed opportunity there for sure.
You definitely missed the opportunity there.
I mean, the one time I don't.
I remember. I remember what it was. It was that Max wasn't going to win by 30 seconds.
Well,
which I guess I kind of got that one right.
You did. He finished last. Yeah, so I think the answer is obviously Carlos, just to throw another, couple of drivers out that had a really good race. I would say both Haas drivers, and they were out there, holding position and doing a good job battling out there and managed to capture points. And also, this has kind of gone under the radar because their car has been so bad, but Yuki has been significantly better than Ricciardo this year, and including in this race where he scored points. So shout out to Yuki. He's doing a strong job over there.
For sure.
All right.
For sure.
There's a lot to choose from here as well. Your disappointment of the day.
Well, I'm not gonna go with the obvious 3 of Max, George, and Lewis, because at the end of the day, the things happening to your car, you wrecking out, stuff like that, it's not really in your control. The disappointment for me has to go solely on the guy that we most associate with that track, with that country, with that, area, and somebody who, just like you just mentioned a few minutes ago with Yuki being so good, Daniel Ricciardo, to me, I don't know what's going on with him. He seems like he just hasn't shown up this year yet. And, this was the race that we all were, oh my God, it's going to be Daniel Ricciardo. He's going to do great. It's in Australia. It's his home race. We want to see this, Oscar Piastri, him, it's going to be amazing, in Australia. and he comes out and just lays an egg pretty much. And at the end, if they would have been the other three drivers would have been on the grid instead of crashing out, he would have ended up in what 17th, 18th, 19th place, something like that. I mean, he was almost at the very end of
15th.
He was on, yeah, he would have ended up in 15th. So, I think
That's
he
also
needed to
largely because Sauber can't do a pit stop, so they automatically just move back down the field.
Exactly. So it's like I wanted to see him do something better here, not only just for him and his team and everything like that, but just because of the fact that this is a race that we look forward to every year. It's kind of between this one and Austin. Those are like the two Daniel Ricciardo like homecoming races, because we all know how much he loves going to Austin. But he's still one of the most popular drivers in the sport. He's kind of now reminding me to throw in an NASCAR reference of kind of like a Dale Earnhardt Jr., where he's a very popular driver, but Dale Earnhardt, as good as he wasn't winning every race either, but he was just a popular Dale Earnhardt Jr. He was not winning every race, but he was just a popular driver and everybody loved him. I think Daniel has that same type of persona, has that same type of magnetism that everybody likes him and wants to see him do good and wants to, is excited for him, but he just hasn't come to do anything, it seems like, this year, except just be out there and drive. Yuki's clearly shown that he's dominant or doing so much better than him so far in this car, and we'll see how that plays out. We're all questioning what's going to happen with them for next year, but at this point you can't say that he's better than Yuki in that car at all.
No, and like I said, Yuki's I feel been the better driver. I'm gonna preface by saying I'm glad this happened, because I didn't want a Red Bull to win again, but Checo, that's embarrassing. Like that car. Look, Ferrari had a great setup this weekend. Max was still the fastest car in qualifying. Checo's just down the grid, and I think even the commentators, everyone's like, he's gonna make a charge. You're still you're watching Carlos pull away up front, but you're kind of have one eye on Checo, because you're like, he's got the car to get up there, and no, he did not. He finished a minute 56 seconds back. It's just, I don't understand. Like, the car was definitely way better than that. He should have been in front of the McLarens at least on pace, and yeah, it's just, I mean, like I said, I'm glad, because the last thing I wanted to see is Max finally has a mechanical issue, and then the next thing Checo's just winning. It's not. Like you said, we want to see some mix up there and have some more stuff to watch this season. So certainly the result was good, but I don't know how he doesn't perform better than that given the situation there. Like, all of a sudden he's the lead driver. He should, finishing 20 plus seconds behind Piastri is not is not the way to do that. And then now there's rumors floating around that, as you mentioned, Carlos is a man on a mission without a seat. And Red Bull has a seat potentially. Checo's he's been working off 1-year contracts, so
yeah,
this might be a definitive race in both of their careers.
Yeah, I mean, that would be kind of interesting to see. Carlos Sainz in that Red Bull would be fun to watch. The thing about it is like, he keeps on getting put in these positions where he's supposed to be the second fiddle. And it's just not happening. When Carlos Sainz signed with Ferrari, we're like, okay, Leclerc's the number one, Carlos Sainz is the number two. Who's won the only 2 races besides Max Verstappen in the past 2 years now?
Yeah,
I mean, besides Sergio Perez in the Red Bull, it's been Carlos Sainz. And, consistently we're seeing that he's fast, man. I mean, how is it that they're justifying this? That, to me, that's gonna be an interesting thing to see next year. Is when Lewis Hamilton, gets into that car, is he going to be faster than Charles too? I mean, is he going to, with the same machinery, is he going to be the faster driver out of the two of them? I mean, he might be, with everything that we've shown now. Charles isn't beating his second driver, especially when it comes to the actual winning part of it. I mean, maybe on a consistent basis, I guess Charles is still in front of him when it comes to point standings, but that's because Carlos, missed a whole race. Where would Carlos Sainz be if he was at the race last week, if he was, there, would he be ahead of Charles? Would he be, level with him? Would he be, somewhere around there? The fact of the matter is he's got 40 compared to 47 points. He could have easily gotten those 7 points, with what's it called? What's his name's points?
Ollie Berman.
Yeah, with Ollie Berman's points, that would have been right there with him.
Yeah. Ollie Berman has should be there at 6. So
6. So he would have been 1 point away.
Well, you got to figure Carlos would have done better than Ollie Berman did too. So yeah, no, he could be insane. Well, these are the good segue. These are the driver standings. Tied at the top all of a sudden. That's what happens when Max has 1 DNF out of the 3 races. But so I'm going to ask you a way too early question. Is this on for real, or is this just a blip?
I think it's just a blip. I mean, I think that Max is still gonna, do Max things. The question is gonna be, is this a one-time thing when it comes to the reliability issue? Max is clearly the best driver. This car is clearly the best car. But is this going to keep on happening with them? Now, there was rumblings of, this was a tear off from the visor that got thrown out and got stuck into that brake duct, and that's what caused everything to lock up. And there's all these things. They're never going to come out with the exact reason why that brake locked up. So it could just be that one-off thing. But at the end of the day, that's what it's going to come down to, unless somebody else comes out with an upgrade package like a Ferrari or a McLaren or even a Mercedes that can really push that car up to where that Red Bull car is. Then nobody's going to touch Max. This is a welcome distraction from what is going to probably be another dominant season by him. Kind of like how Singapore was last year, that it was just a blip in a little chink in the armor, but nothing that's going to really affect everything overall. I agree. How about you? Yeah,
this is probably as close as it's going to get. It's a confluence of events. It is fun to see another team, win. But yeah, I think this is going to order will be restored. We'll find out in a couple of weeks in Japan. Just real quick before we get out of here. Constructors also has tightened up considerably.
Yeah.
Again, DNF and then Checo is gonna cost you a lot of points. So it is 4 points on the constructors. Big drop off to McLaren from there, and then another pretty decent drop off to Mercedes. Again, double DNF. So early in the season, if you have a DNF, you're gonna fall pretty far down the standings. Probably tells you something that Max is still winning even with the DNF. But yeah, I guess.
I mean, it's interesting to me.
One might be a little
bit more McLaren up there.
Yeah, and this one might be a little bit more interesting towards the middle late of the season because Carlos and Checo are able to, finish ahead of. I mean, Carlos and Charles are able to. I guess they're both Charles in a way. Are able to finish ahead of Checo pretty consistently. Then they could battle for the constructors here, depending on how poorly Checo does and how many races they're able to. Win off of Max. So. This one could be a little bit more interesting. What do you think?
I mean, it's clear that the Red Bull and the Ferraris are the fastest cars out there right now. McLaren's doing a great job of kind of rounding out that top 6. And I love to see, obviously we all know I'm a McLaren fan. I'm a Lando fan. I've been a fan of his for a while. I think that car is clearly the 3rd fastest car out there right now. I don't think that there's any question about it. When you have him and Oscar constantly, right next to each other when qualifying, they're qualifying 5th and 6th next to each other, or 2nd and 3rd next to each other, or 4th and 5th. They're always so consistent and right there with each other that it's really shown how far they've come with that car since the beginning of last year to where they are now. That maybe they're not all the way up there ready to get that win, and that kind of goes into one of the points I was going to make. That Lando Norris has now set the record for the most podiums without a win in Formula One history, and it just kind of shows that that car and him are so consistent that they're able to always be up there, just not quite to that level yet where they're up with the Red Bulls and the Ferraris and stuff like that. but it shows in the constructors that, again, they've built a good car, and they've built a car that can, on a consistent basis, be up there in the right after those two in the front, and give them a push and a run for the money on any given day.
Yeah, no, and it'll be interesting to see if they can win a race this year. But I mean, look, it's still Red Bulls to lose, but maybe Ferrari can give them at least push them a little, give us something interesting to watch. So, as I alluded to earlier, the next race is in a couple of weeks in Japan, and then
Another
from there,
great race.
and from there then to China. So we're sticking in Asia for a bit. But we'll be back next week previewing like you said, it's Suzuka. It's another classic track. We're getting into the after the kind of, I don't want to. I mean the let's just say the monetarily purchased races. We're now getting on to the classic tracks, Suzuka after Albert Park. So yeah, we'll be back next Tuesday to preview that race and Canes Cats Heat. It's 10 o'clock is baseball.
Nice.
So that's coming up in about 10 minutes. All right, Evan, my man, thanks for joining me. It was good. Let's hope for more chaos in Japan and some more mixing up of the standings here.
For sure. It was fun. It was definitely a great race. I remember I texted both of you guys, wow.
Yeah.
Just, texted you and Jazz, just one, or I tweeted it out. I just tweeted, wow, just because it's incredible, that we don't want to ever see something bad happen to somebody. Let's preface this, first by saying that we don't want to see anything bad happen to anybody. But at the end of the day, Max gets knocked out of the race at the beginning of the race. It lightens everything up. It makes you think, oh my God, this is an actual race now. This is something that we can enjoy the whole thing. It's not just him flying away. But it was a great race overall, and I think that I'd like to see more strong racing like this throughout the rest of the year. And I think that we might get it, whether Max still wins every single race or not. I think we might be in for a good year is what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Let us hope, and let's hope we see more of that in Japan. Again, join us next week. We will be previewing the Japanese Grand Prix. Thanks everyone for watching.